On behalf of the Professional Baseball Strength and Conditioning Coaches Society, I'd like to welcome you to the PBSCCS Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Messina.
All right, everybody. I'm with Max Miller, the Seattle Mariners organization. Max, thanks for coming on, man. Appreciate your time. Tell the listeners about yourself, if you would, please.
Yeah, my name is Max Miller. I'm from West Virginia originally. I am the Complex League strength coach for the Seattle Mariners. My job is to handle the performance training with the Complex League team and then the post-draft Bridge League group. And being out of the complex, you also play a role and assist with the rehab that happens out of the complex as needed. And then any minor league free agents that come through, handle their intake, making sure they're taken care of before they go out to whatever level they're going to be at.
And what was your journey to the Mariners?
Yeah, so I played college ball. I played college baseball at the Division II level. Over that journey of playing, I started experiencing all kinds of injuries and stuff through my sophomore year, and then coming into my junior year of college, that kind of escalated into a period of time like being sick. Had all kinds of problems metabolically, with dropping weight like crazy, couldn't sleep, and went through a period about 6 months seeing doctors, trying to figure out what's going on with my body, and would wind up getting diagnosed with an autoimmune disease and fibromyalgia. Exercise and diet, best thing to take care of that. So that launched me into like a passion for holistic health, and particularly the weight room. So fell in love with strength and conditioning. Coming out of college, got an opportunity to be an intern at a startup called Athletes in Action, where my boss and mentor was a 21-year NFL strength coach. Won a Super Bowl, actually. His name is Jeff Friday, great guy. So I got 2.5 years sitting under him and learning, and eventually it was time to spread my wings and go learn and be out on my own. So got my first opportunity with Boston last year at the FCL level as a seasonal assistant strength coach. And I think I had a little bit of a learning curve first coming into baseball, but spent the year there, got through some external circumstances, more and more opportunity for some responsibility, and then was able to be a part of our performance camp in the fall. And then coming from there, got my first full-time role this year with the Mariners at the ACL level.
So our paths technically did not cross with the Red Sox, but I have heard good things about you from both the Red Sox staff and then also some people I trust with the Mariners. So we'll get into that a little bit later. But first, did you always think that like baseball was going to be your thing? Have you ever thought about like pursuing something else, or was the Athletes in Action experience enough to tell you like, okay, yeah, I know I want to go into baseball?
Yeah. So coming like up as a youth, I played baseball was the avenue. So getting into exercise science to start with was because I wanted to be in baseball in my life. And at the time I thought maybe it's as PT, maybe it's trying to play, whatever it is. I just wanted to be in baseball. And then having that experience where, I got kind of sick, I got removed from baseball, my health removed me from baseball. And then it was just strength and conditioning, and just fell in love with the field in general. And then, the opportunity at the Red Sox, it almost feels like it just fell on my lap. And an opportunity to get like back into something that I love, which is the game of baseball. So not something that coming originally into the strength field that I was specifically pursuing, but something that I certainly couldn't pass up.
So you're still young in the field, but I do want to know what your best professional baseball story is so far. Either something you laugh about, something you're proud of, just like what's the best memory you have thus far?
Yeah. So one to laugh about, being young and new into this. I'm still working on Spanish. I'm still trying to grow with that. And this spring training, I had a particular athlete who kept calling me Flacco, which I at the time assumed was about Joe Flacco, saying I look like Joe Flacco or something like that. And of course, tell some of my other coworkers, my other staff members, and I'm like, no, that's Spanish for skinny. He's calling you skinny. So that's probably my best one. But it's been cool to be around some guys I grew up watching play too, like being in spring training, getting to see Ichiro go through his routines still around the club. I mean, that's pretty cool too.
There are other people that have worked for the Mariners that told me they got to see Ichiro as well. And I'm curious, like, if he's full unied and like practicing and like still working out, because the people that I had talked to said he still treats it as if he could play today.
Yeah, no, he's full uni, taking swings in the cage. You see him on the field, hanging out with the players, outside doing his like I don't want to call it pre-game, but pre-practice routine right on the turf, right outside the weight room, right before he goes out in the field with the guys. So yeah, he full uni and everything. Looks
That's
like
really
he could
cool.
still play.
Yeah, it's really cool, especially like when you played baseball growing up and you're a baseball fan. And not that, you want to be a fan when you're at work, you try to keep it professional. But there was a day when I was in the big leagues with Boston that I had a conversation with Dustin Pedroia, David Ortiz, Jason Varitek, and then one other person was around. I think it was Tim Wakefield. And I grew up a Yankees fan, and I was like, 10-year-old me would just be so upset right now. But at the same time, like, just you spend time around those guys, they're cool people, you get to know their families and everything, and getting to know them as more than just baseball players is really cool. But also like, the fan in you of growing up, being around baseball. I watched this guy. I hated this guy as a kid because, he always stuck it to my team, and now I'm like spending the day with him. So yeah, I've heard the same thing about Ichiro from a couple other people, and it's pretty cool that he stays in playing shape and he can still swing it. And he was the man in his prime, but I can imagine he could probably still go out and hit a couple, get a couple hits in a night if he needed to in a pinch. So kind of cool for you, especially so early on in your career.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think he probably still is the man. He walks around, everyone still looks at him like he's the man. So
of course. What do you believe in within strength and conditioning that others think you're crazy for believing?
Yeah, this one's not too crazy controversial, but it is something. It's all about the basics. If I put 20 different programs up on a board, I'm going to get 20 different positive results. The things that bring the program to life, I think, are probably more important than the X's and O's of the specific program. Your ability to progressively overload, your ability to build relationships with the athletes and actually get them to do what you want to do. Like, the best program out there is one that the athletes are actually going to do, not the best X's and O's. If the flow in your workout is terrible, then athletes are going to check out, and I mean, you might as well not even be there. So the things that bring your program to life, I think, are probably even bigger than the X's and O's. And there, of course, there's reasons why we choose the programs that we do, and reasons why we choose the patterns and the exercise patterns, everything that we do. There's reasons why, but the things behind it and the basics is what brings that to life. I still see people talking about like, what's the best variation for like a lateral lunge, or the best variation for a squat pattern. Like, I don't know, man. It's the one that the athlete's going to do. You're going to be able to coach well, and that's going to flow well within the context of your workout.
I think that's especially relevant in the professional baseball setting as well. Even being in the complex, you have more resources than maybe an affiliate, but if your ambitions are to move up, into affiliates and then eventually to the big leagues, that buy-in piece goes so far. And sometimes the training doesn't look as sexy as you'd think with pros, but it's consistent. And I think that's probably a huge key, is, like you said, how you deliver it, getting them to buy in. And then even something like you said that kind of goes by the wayside sometimes is just the flow of the session. And I'm sure there's been times where you're coaching where you just feel out of sync, and you can tell the athletes kind of aren't into it. And it's part of your job to get them back on track, get yourself back on track, and, take a breath and kind of get going again. And, ultimately that's what we're there for. We're just kind of a support staff within our realm to be able to help them. But also, if they're not interested in coming to us, that's just, one less guy that you can have an impact on. So something as simple, like you said, as the flow of the weight room, and that can change a whole plan. And, in my role now, I have interns, and that's kind of part of the thing we teach them, is just like, if you have to set up a weight room, if you have to set up the workout, like, think about the flow of this. Even something as simple as, you have an indoor exercise, and then you have an outdoor exercise, and then you have an indoor, and then you have an outdoor. Like, they're going to be walking back and forth over the course of, one or two of your training blocks. Like, that plays into it. And eventually either they're going to get lost wandering somewhere, or they're going to check out, or they're going to forget to go outside when they need to. So how about we just change this so that all the outside stuff is done together, all the inside
Sure.
stuff is done together. So just stuff like that, I think, goes a long way. And it sounds like, even early in your career, you're able to kind of adapt that flow and kind of get guys to buy in. And it kind of leads me to where I want this first part to go, is just, I want to have a general discussion on working in the complex league, what your day-to-day looks like, working with younger players, not knowing Spanish, like just kind of kick us off with maybe what your day-to-day schedule and responsibilities look like, and we can go from there.
Yeah. And I have been blessed at this point to see what the complex league looks like in Florida and what it looks like in Arizona too. So I think probably a little bit more regularity in the schedule in Florida than there is in Arizona, but Arizona certainly has its perks too. For one, everything's a little bit closer, so that is nice. But the day rotates here a little bit. Some days we have a morning schedule, some days we have an evening schedule, but regardless, the day is going to be the same every single day. It just changes what time you're coming in. So get in a few hours early, take care of whatever personal business you have, whatever training you're going to do for the day, and then help out with whatever staff are going to join in too. If staff want to work out, help them out. So do that, take care of that first part of the day, clean up and be ready to go, and then circle the wagons with the people you need to talk to. So athletic trainer is obviously a big piece of that. Like go and have a very formal sit down with him, and then also bounce in with your baseball staff as well. Talk to your manager, your hitting coach, your pitching coach. Just get like a basic overview of what the day looks like from both sides, and also just a general update on how guys are doing on both ends, so we're all on the same page. Make sure you got to take care of yourself in baseball. If you're not taking care of yourself, you're gonna burn out pretty quick. So make sure you eat, make sure you're ready for the day that's about to come to you, and make sure you're there in plenty of time to accomplish all those things before the day actually starts. And then, like we just talked about, actually staging your weight room and putting things where they need to go so the flow is going to be nice. Before the first group even comes in, like I have a plan. Whoever's with me as the team, we all know the plan, and the weight room's set up, and we're ready to go. We're 2 steps ahead of whatever's going to happen next. So our position players are the first thing we deal with. It's either going to be movement prep or a lift. Here we're doing lifts twice a week. So most days it's going to be prep, a couple of days it's a lift. So you set up the weight room for that, get them through their routines. They flow out to the cage and the pitchers come in, and so now it's their turn. Get them through their routines. We have a relatively large pitcher group here, so that's a time when they're in the weight room to give them any kind of announcements they're going to need for the flow of their day. But get them through their routines and get them out to a stretch, get them through their stretch. And by the time they're done stretching, usually the position players are starting to flow out. And you can get them through their stretch as well while bouncing back and forth to get conditioning for your pitchers in. And as they're done conditioning, bounce into the weight room, pitcher lifts, take care of business there, change, be ready for a game. Sometimes it's a road game, getting your game gear, get a quick snack in you and get out to the field for stretch, on the bus if it's a road game, and then back in the stadium if it's home game. And cheer the boys on, let them know that you're invested in their career, right? Don't just be a weight room only strength coach. Be on the field and be loud and be excited to see your guys succeed. So and generally that's the day.
What time does the morning schedule day start versus the evening schedule day? Because that's different than Florida. They don't do that in Florida, right?
No. Florida is pretty consistent day to day. Like the game time might switch, but the report time is usually the same. When we have a morning day, we might have like a 8 a.m. movement prep. So, guys are starting to get around 6:30. If you're trying to take care of, whatever staff stuff first, maybe around 6:30. And then days with an evening schedule, you might have like a 12 o'clock or something start for your first movement prep. So usually getting in there. Personally, I'm getting in there around 10 a.m. Have a couple hours to kind of sit there and make sure everything's ducks in a row before we start going.
Yeah, something that you mentioned that I think is very important is taking care of yourself. And sometimes you need to just get there. It seems crazy to be there like 2+ hours early, but sometimes like you need that time of like just by yourself or maybe a couple coaches, get a lift, get a shower, get some food, and give yourself time to like mentally prepare for the day. Because sometimes the days are so long and you never know what's coming that sometimes you just need that Zen moment for yourself. And then, you forget to eat throughout the day and then you're like exhausted and you're like, oh, I need a snack really quick. Like you're eating standing up sometimes. So I think as you get older, just make sure that you continue to prioritize taking care of
Sure.
yourself. I would say that would be my advice to you. And then how many guys do you have? I know you said there's also rehab. So like in total, how many do you have for like rookie specific, maybe rehab? Obviously that fluctuates. And then kind of in total, how many guys are you looking at per day?
Sure. With Boston, we had like 65 guys last year. I remember that was like the total number. Here, I'm not exactly sure what our rehab number is. I know we started rookie ball with 34 men on the roster. And then after the draft, now we start Bridge League. We started our Bridge League with a 42-man roster. So I mean, it's a pretty big roster. Rehabs are ranging. Obviously, that's like an ever fluctuating number, but somewhere ballpark of 20. So around that 60 mark in terms of bodies at the complex. And that's something else that like you work with here too. Coordinating your schedule with the rehab crew, your PTs and your rehab strength coach to kind of figure out like when they're going to go and how can we best like separate those groups so that the weight room is not just slammed at any one time. I mean, that's the one shared space. So it's going to be very easy for it to end up being a zoo in there if you're not ahead of it and taking care of the schedule and how you're going to split those groups.
You've mentioned it a couple times. Can you talk on what the Bridge League is? Matt actually introduced me to that when he came to speak with us. I had never heard of it. Can you just kind of talk about what that is?
Yeah. So last year was my first year in baseball. We had 2-3 months of extended spring, and then rolled right into the FCL season. This year that was moved up. We did a month of extended spring and then started the ACL season. So it went from May through the end of July here. At that point, the guys from the draft are activated and they're now on this Bridge League roster, which is less games a week, specifically purposed around development. So kind of like in the same way that extended spring, like stats don't count, rolling innings, being able to, extend an inning to get guy extra pitches or do situational work, like starting inning with a man on second. Same thing going here, just with after the season as opposed to before the season.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. I think at that level, development is super critical anyways. And that kind of leads me to my next thing. Like, obviously you're working with a bunch of first year guys in the org coming out of the draft or younger high school or Latin kids. Like, what is that like for you in terms of maybe your long-term approach and your long-term outlook? Like, in my mind, the fruits of your labor don't come to fruition for 3 to 5 to 7 years with those guys. So like, what does that long-term outlook look like? And then when you're finding difficulty working with guys, like how are you maybe using that outlook to kind of help motivate and guide them? Does that make sense?
Absolutely. So, like, yeah, remember you're dealing with a young athlete, and most of these young athletes are novices to the gym. They're unfamiliar with your programming and they're unfamiliar with the exercises themselves. So don't be afraid to jump in and coach the rep. I think the goal is by the time they move up to the next level, they are familiar and proficient with our big rock movements. It might not happen on a proficiency with every single exercise that's in our inventory. It might not happen, but can I get you to a point where you're proficient with all of our big rock things that you're going to see at every level of play at this organization? I want you to like know the expectation of what the exercise is, what I'm trying to get out of the exercise, and what you're supposed to. So jump in, coach the rep, and do your best to explain what that is. And sometimes you're dealing with a Latin kid, and there's a little bit of a language barrier. Do your best, use whatever resources around to help try and create an understanding of this is exactly what our goal is with this specific exercise. So that's like the small view, but if you like step out with it too, the other thing you have to remember is, I'm dealing with like an 18 to 21-year-old, and remember what you were like as an 18 to 21-year-old. And they're going to have fun with whatever they do. Whatever they do, they want to have fun with it. So buy into that and have fun with them. It doesn't take that much energy to show up and be energetic and put a smile on your face and have a handshake with a guy. And doing that stuff, I think, goes a longer way for having buy-in with your players that's going to last long term throughout the course of their time in this organization than pretty much any other thing that you do. If they just see that you love on them and that you care and that you're going to have fun with them, that's great. So I go back to something my first grade teacher told me, and I'll tell the guys this too. I'll be as fun as you let me be, and I'll be as mean as you make me be. Like, there's still a standard, and we have to meet that standard. We're gonna hold you accountable, and we're gonna work hard, but let's have fun doing it.
Yeah, I would imagine there's times where you have to be really discipline oriented with the kids. And I think for me, that's been like I said, I have interns now here, and that's been a big thing for me, is like trying to think about when I was in undergrad and I was, 20 years old, 22 years old, whatever it was. And like, I wasn't that smart then. I'm not even that smart now. So like being able to just take a step back and be like, listen, instead of like getting frustrated with them, like meet them where they're at, get on their page, try to teach them so that, moving forward, they can be better. And that's, ultimately what we're trying to do. And I like I said, I like the quote that you said, you can have fun with them. You also have to be discipline oriented at times, and you just have to kind of figure out where that all fits. I think a big thing in baseball is having feel, right? And sometimes it's easy for them to pressure you into just being the feel guy or the feel girl. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, we haven't gotten any work in all week because ultimate feel person over there has like let us slide. And I think that's probably the exact opposite of what you need at a complex league. But if you're too discipline oriented, you're going to lose them also. So kind of finding that middle ground with them, I'm sure it's a very daunting task at times.
Oh yeah.
Just because I know how kids are. I have a younger brother who just turned 21, so I can understand. Sometimes I talk to him and I'm just like, what are you doing? Like, just do this, do this, do this. I'm giving you the blueprint to success. But yeah, you got to kind of let them find their own way, have their own fun. And I think the other thing too, right, is it's their first exposure to professional baseball. And so a lot of them don't know what it means to be a pro. And a lot of them don't understand that, there's a lot that goes into a daily schedule. There's a lot of places that they need to be. There's a lot of people that expect them to kind of fall in line. And sometimes it just happens that you end up being the one that they trust. And, they come to you and they're like, oh, this hitting coach doesn't like me. And it's like, well, no, it's just, he wants you to be a pro. He's trying to teach you to be a pro. He's just doing it in his way. So I'm sure you've seen a lot of that with the kids there. I'm sure it's a lot of fun, but also like banging your head against the wall sometimes, I'm sure is a very real thing. And then you mentioned also talking with baseball staff and talking with the ATCs, just kind of talk on what it means to work in a collaborative environment, specifically with those younger kids in that setting.
Yep. I think it comes down to like a circle the wagons and do that constantly, always be on the same page. So every morning I'm going to go into the athletic trainer and I'm going to meet him on his schedule. We're going to go over everybody that's on the injury report and then the guys that are off the injury report. So talk about, what guys we need to make specific changes for, but then just what we got on field with different guys, like, hey man, like I got this guy, feeling this way. Has he talked to you? Has he not talked to you? And then, there's that ever working sort of process of trying to match the messaging from the athletic training room to the weight room, making sure that we're both on the same page. We're both communicating the same thing. So an athlete comes, leaves the day saying, oh, wow, I heard the same thing from this guy in the athletic training room as I heard from Max in the weight room, right? Like having that messaging, I think is going to go a long way for the guys. So, make it a point to circle the wagons with the athletic trainer every single day, make that formal. And then I do circle the wagons with my baseball staff as well. And, maybe with that one, be a little bit more relaxed, be a little bit more informal, but every single day, make a point to connect with them, get a feel for what they're doing with their schedule, what I'm doing with my schedule. Make sure, once again, we're trying to get that messaging on the same page. And one of the big things for me too, is I'm going to put out a report on how the guys are doing. They're going to see a trend report, and that trend report is going to go to the baseball staff. So I don't want my report to be the first time that my hitting coach or pitching coach hears anything about these players. If a guy's doing really well, I want my baseball coaches to know that before the report. If they're struggling, I want them to know that before the report. So we're just constantly on the same page and working on this process of getting on the same page and working on this process of making sure the messaging is the same no matter where the athlete's at.
How often are you going over those reports? Is that a daily thing, weekly thing, monthly thing?
The official report comes out every 2 weeks. We put out an official report on the players every 2 weeks, but talking with the coaches, that is a daily task. Always popping out, hey man, this player did great today. This guy's been struggling, or he had a day here or he had a day there that, he wasn't he wasn't at his best. So we're gonna put our thumb on him and see if we can't get him back to the top notch.
In terms of the medical team that you guys have out here in Arizona, like what does that look like? Is it just you? Do you have an assistant? How many ATCs? How many
Yep.
PTs? Like how big is that group?
Yep. So I have one intern with me. That's our ACL strength staff. At the beginning of the season, we just had one athletic trainer. Randy's been down here for a very long time. I think it's 27 years in this role specifically, and he's seen it all. He's an awesome. He's a beast. But recently, he's got an intern to help him out too. So loop her into those conversations as well. Then of course we have the athletic training coordinator based out of here, and then 3 PTs and our director of rehab as well. So I have a little bit more involvement with our athletic training staff than our PTs at the moment, but of course there's also just kind of, daily conversations and passing with the PTs as well. And if you're going to do anything to jump in with the rehab, then get in touch with them and know and be on the same page with them with what they're doing with the athletes, what you're going to do in the weight room.
Yeah, that makes sense. I feel like the complex league usually has a little bit bigger of a staff just because you have all those rehab guys. And, obviously, like you said, it fluctuates with rehab, but it's probably better to be over prepared and just expect that you're going to have a lot of injuries. And then, maybe luckily you don't. But I also think it's probably naive to be like, oh, our program's the best. We're never going to have injuries. Like it's just inevitable in the game, especially, the schedule of baseball. Guys are definitely going to get hurt, and they're definitely going to have to be sent to either Arizona or Florida long term. So that's kind of just my thought, is like you just have a bigger staff, and there's always something to be done. And I feel like, somebody like yourself, even though you may not be officially rehab, you're definitely going to get pulled into it just because you're in the same place. And that rehab group, if by some miracle they have free time, I'm sure they would help you out in a pinch as well.
For sure.
All right, everybody, that's going to conclude part 1 of this 2-part episode with Max. I hope you enjoyed this one. This was another good look behind the curtain of what it's like to work in rookie ball. 3 things I took from Max in this episode. Collaboration with other departments is essential and should be addressed regularly. Don't overlook the importance of the flow of a training session in regards to athlete buy-in. And the best program is the one that athletes will commit to, regardless of how good the specific X's and O's are. With that being said, I hope you enjoyed this episode, and we'll talk to you again on the next one.